he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's my man Tales 100 back again, another episode of How's My Team. So we've got a bit to talk about. Obviously, we've got plenty of the Cubs series, obviously against the Mets and against the Brewers this week. We've obviously got the Giants in a big clash, an important clash for them against the Hawthorn Hawks at the MCG. We've also got the Titans at home just before the bye against the Bulldogs after coming off an impressive win against the Panthers. Australia versus Paraguay, obviously in the last group stage of Group D, to see if they qualify for the round of 32, and plenty of other things to talk about. So let's get started with the episode. Alright, going to bite the bullet. I'm going to start with the Giants with the main portion of this episode, and it was a 13-point loss to Hawthorn at the MCG. For the Giants, though, it did look like it was going to be an absolute trouncing. So it's 96-82, 14 goals 12 to 12 goals 10. So, but at the point at halftime, they led by 30. So that's what it was looking like. It was looking like that's what I kind of expected. I think they're only up by 7 at quarter time as well. So the fact that it blew out to 30, it was kind of expected. I kind of expected they were going to trounce us, but they didn't really. We can't hang around for a little bit. Just they ended up scoring a few more goals towards the end of the game, which kind of sucked. Kept the margin alive, but it was 3 goals 5 to 2 goals 4 in favour of the Hawks in the first quarter, which made it obviously 7 points. Then it ended up being a 6-goal and 1 behind quarter for the Hawks. And it was a 2-goal and 2 behind quarter for the Giants. So obviously that made it the 30 points there. There was some injuries obviously going from this game, and I'll talk about those in a minute. It was 4 goals 3 to the Hawks in the third quarter compared to 6 goals straight in the third quarter. So a big quarter for the Giants. The third quarter obviously brought it back to 21 points, which was great in that regard. And then it was 1 goal 3 in the last quarter for the Hawks compared to 2 goals and 4 behinds for the Giants. So ultimately, if we ended up having some of those 4 behinds actually being goals, it probably would have made the game a little bit more interesting towards the end. But unfortunately, we didn't get the win. Though we did throw a little bit at the game in particular. But there was some injuries, obviously, as well. In terms of the team stats, disposal efficiency was not good. 73.2% for the Hawks, 66.8% for the Giants. So not great at all. Efficiency inside 50 was a little bit better, obviously, with that possession. 62.5% for the Giants, 42.2% for the Hawks. We'll say the free kicks, 22-15. In the end of the first quarter, it was 11-3. So that's what it kind of looked like at the end of the first quarter, despite being down by 7 points. And literally that third one was right before the siren at quarter time, massively in the favour of the Hawthorn Hawks early on in that game in particular. The Hawks ended up having 10 more turnovers in their favour. 24 clearances in front, 54-30. But yeah, it wasn't ideal in terms of that. In terms of players scoring goals, we'll say for the Hawthorn Hawks, Nick Watson, the The Magician ended up going off with an injury. I think it was his leg in particular. I think it might have been a hamstring or something like that. And they were aware of it, so they just kind of kept him off. In terms of goal scorers for the Giants, Callum Brown, 3 goals straight, top scorer. Aaron Cadman with 2, Toby Green with 2 goals, 2. Lockie Ash with 1 goal, Finn Callahan with 1 goal, Stephen Canelio, 1 goal, Clayton Oliver, 1 goal, Jake Stringer, 1 goal, 2. Then Ryan Angwin scored a behind, as did Toby Bedford, which was at the end of the first quarter after that free kick, so it could have been a little bit closer, could have been 1 point in it at the end of the first quarter. Phoenix got a behind. Max Grueski got 2 behinds as well. And speaking of Matt Grueski, he ended up going off injured, as well as Brent Daniels in this game in particular, so not ideal in terms of that. I believe it was patella in dislocation for Max Grueski, and I think it was a calf for Brent Daniels. So not ideal in that. Max Grueski possibly could have at least scored a goal or 2 out of the 2 behinds that he did hit. Toby Bedford possibly could have got 1 back as well, so that could have been almost 18 points going back in our swing, and we probably would have won by only a couple of points. But not ideal. They didn't play great during the game in particular, especially when I was watching in the first quarter. They were a bit average, and towards the end of the last quarter as well, when obviously points were against them. Right now, we're still in 13th position. Obviously, big hit, decent hit to our percentage. Looking like it was going to be a lot more than that, but it's 99.3% now. So big gap between us and obviously St Kilda now. Obviously, St Kilda are on the bye, so they're also, yes, going to be in front of us, but I'm going to be on the same amount of points. But there's a lot more games to play. Obviously, Carlton's still got to play against West Coast, so they could jump us at this point in time. And the gap could widen if Collingwood also win as well. So, and Collingwood have Richmond as well. So, not ideal. Obviously, next game obviously is in Canberra against obviously the leading Fremantle Dockers, which also doesn't help with the Giants, because this is a game against the Hawks that we possibly could have won. And ultimately, they did get revenge for opening round, though we did win by 27 points in that game in particular. So not completely absolved, but not ideal in terms of results. And it feels like it's getting closer and closer to the season ending, and we're going to miss even a wildcard spot in its first iteration. So that's going to be great for that, and more injuries just keep piling up. I don't know who we're going to get, because Jaden Laverde, keep calling him Jack, it's Jaden Laverde, is out for a couple of weeks, close to a month, and Jesse Hogan's out indefinitely as well. So not great in terms of that going into that game against Fremantle. At this point, Fremantle possibly could rest some stars, because the Sydney Swans end up losing as well to Brisbane. So Brisbane move into the top 6 at this point. Thankfully, at least for them, Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs are on the bye, so they might not actually drop out of the top 6 at this point. And Sydney are now 4 points behind, with Fremantle playing against the Gold Coast. I believe that's possibly at People First Stadium as well for Gold Coast, so I'm not sure. But yeah, not ideal in terms of the Giants, but possibly Fremantle, with the travel that they've got to do to Canberra and back, they might be able to rest some players, maybe not all of them obviously, but rest some of their important players off until they obviously have their big clashes coming up after that. So ultimately, I feel like it is a game that Fremantle could drop some of their players, but who knows if they will. They're still flying high, still 13 straight at the moment, 13 or 14 straight, going into obviously this week's game. But yeah, so we have them, and then obviously have the Cats at home at NG Stadium, and then obviously the game against Essendon before we play against the Swans. So yeah, not an ideal couple of weeks coming up, but hopefully we can get a win in either of those games in particular, because if we can, that'll be great. But we should have kind of won against the Hawks the way that we're playing. So a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. At least we got a little bit closer to when we were, because 30 points was what I was expecting, and it blew out a little bit more than that. To over 30 points. I think it ended up being like 37 at one stage, possibly almost even in the 40s. But what can you do? It's something that happens all the time, and this team has just been hit with an injury plague, and it's not ideal for the team. Obviously, we're going to have some VFL players probably come up as well. So we'll see what happens. I think Connor Stone and players like that will play next week. But I don't think they'll be rushing a lot of the players back that probably towards the end of the season, like, say, Darcy Jones, possibly maybe in the last couple of weeks if he gets in. Josh Kelly, especially with him being out for most of the season, I don't think they'll rush those players back. So, it's just one of those things. There's not much more I could say about the Giants right now, but they were a little bit woeful, but 14-point loss to the Hawks at the MCG for the Giants. And with that, we talk about the Titans, and the Titans also went down yesterday, so obviously recording this on Saturday morning, but obviously both the Giants and the Titans played. The Titans actually did play first, so they played the early game for the NRL. They played the 6 o'clock game, so it's one of those things. 30 points to 12 and ended up being against the Bulldogs, and not ideal at all in terms of the Titans. Thought this game might have been a little bit closer than it was. Did bomb a couple of tries as well ourselves, so I think it was only 1 or 2, so could have been closer. But in saying that, when we did score, we missed the conversions as well, so it made it a hell of a lot bigger in terms of a margin. Obviously 18-point loss. So we'll say with the Bulldogs, they scored first in the 14th minute off Jethro Rinakama. I believe that's how that's pronounced. Then Josh Curran ended up scoring very close, thankfully, at least for the dummy half. I think Haywood passed it to his left. Josh Curran just went straight through the line, ended up scoring, made it 12-0 at half-time, with the conversions going through. In fact, actually, Stephen Crichton was perfect for this game. Philip Sami got one back at the 52nd minute. Obviously, Jaden Campbell kind of had a bit of a shocker today in terms of the game. Missed all his conversions. Apparently wasn't great in attack either. There was a few opportunities with tries, obviously, from the Bulldogs that should have probably not went through, but it was not a great situation at all. Then Rinakama ended up scoring in the 61st minute as well. Then Max King, who used to play for the Titans at one stage, there ended up scoring in the 66th minute in his 150th game, I think it was. And I think possibly was his 100th try for the Bulldogs as well. So congrats to him, obviously, on 150 games. Got over the stripe as well, and the whole team kind of got around him as well with that. So, there's great support there, especially with a player that's, playing milestone games. Great to see. Then Philip Sami ended up scoring a brace, scored in the 69th minute, and then also scored in the 72nd minute as well. So he ended up getting a hat-trick in this game in particular. Bo Firma, I will say, had an opportunity to kind of break in between those and accidentally dropped the ball behind him as he was going towards the line. Was in coverage, kind of got out of that coverage, but dropped the ball and did end up getting over the line. So that's one try that was at least bombed. There was another one that got very close with Oliver Pascoe at the end of the first half as well. The defensive effort was pretty good for the Bulldogs as well, but we were woeful. And then Josh Curran scored his second try in the 77th minute, and the conversion went through to make it 30 points to 12. And, obviously I said thank you and congrats obviously to my friend Jordan. Obviously he's a Bulldog supporter, so it was obviously our rivalry game with him versus me. And usually some of these games are usually very, very enticing. And yeah, it's one of those things where I already said congrats to him. He said, "Oh, they were getting close towards the end of the game. They just ran out of time." I said, "Look, it just didn't look like that, considering that." Yeah, and I even watched the highlights, and they could have been closer, but yeah. So ultimately, at this point, Gold Coast sit in 15th position still, going into the bye. So we'll get the 2 points next week for the bye before we play against Melbourne, which is going to be interesting after the bye. But realistically, this game and obviously the Tigers games were 2 games that we possibly should have got points out of. We didn't, which was unfortunate. So it would realistically be on the same amount of points as Melbourne going into this game, going after this game, going into their game, I believe today, later today, against the Manly Seagulls. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Canberra still got to play. They got to play against the Dragons, I should say. Sorry, felt like there was a burp coming on there. But Canberra still got to play. Obviously, they're on the same amount of points as well. So if they do win, they'll jump. They'll jump us into 15th, and we'll drop to 16th. So we'll talk about that at the end of the week. But yeah, not ideal from the Titans there. Though I will say was a little bit better in the fact that the Broncos lost again. It's just unfortunate that the Broncos won one extra game so far in front of us because, we'd be on the same amount of points as them. And they're very close to dropping in the bottom 4. Unfortunately, they're not. They're not going to. Or there might be a possibility they might drop in the bottom 4 if Canberra do win. So Canberra's still got to win and win by more than 9 points. So if they win by more than 9, they'll jump into 13th position from 16th. So that's how close it is at the bottom, but that makes it 7 losses in a row for Brisbane. And it's a streak that not even the Titans had. In fact, I think the only team that had that streak was the Dragons this year. So that says a lot about the reigning premiers, and arguably my adage of worst premiers ever still looking pretty good, especially in the NRL era. Looking pretty good in terms of that because they're playing pretty horribly right now. But yeah, so made my Friday night just that little bit better. Alright, first up in the miscellaneous stuff, we'll talk about the Cubs. Obviously the Cubs' first series against the Mets. We're not talking about Australia just yet. We'll get to that in a second because technically the Cubs and the Mets played first, and I want to get rid of this because we got so many notifications from these games. So obviously 4-game series for the Cubs and the Mets, though in saying that, like the last game with the Blue Jays, the first game was actually postponed until the Thursday, so Friday my time, when we had a doubleheader for this series in particular. So we ended up getting into a situation where we had to play 2 games back to back. So interesting series because we had quite a few things go wrong in some capacity for these games in particular. So we'll talk about the results now. But in the 4-game series, it was a sweep. We swept them 4 games to nothing. And it was a season sweep as well, because obviously we played them earlier in April and won the series 3-0 there as well. So first game, 9-6 in terms of runs, 5 runs in the second inning. In the top of the second, the Mets scored 2 in the bottom of the second. Then the Cubs ended up scoring 2 in the fourth, in the top of the fourth. The Mets scored 1 in the bottom of the 7th. We scored 2 in the top of the 8th, and they scored 3 at the bottom of the 9th. We'll say there was an injury, obviously, in this game in particular, and again, it was another pitcher. So Edward Cabrera was carted off the field during that game, left leg injury, after covering first base on an inning-ending out. So he goes up to the base. Kind of obviously crouches down and gets obviously his leg stretches I think it's the left leg, obviously the leg that's actually off the base. That is the one that's actually given him a bit of strife. And he was down for quite a few minutes as well, because it was a lengthy injury delay during this game. So he's down with a injury on the 15-day injury list with a left hamstring adductor injury. Hopefully it's not too bad. So we called up Vince Velasquez to the team, obviously in spite of that. And then also before the second game, we ended up having Ben Brown actually go down on the 15-day injury list as well with neck strain. So this is something that he had last year as well. So it's not a unique situation for him. But I swear this team is cursed because that's arguably our best pitcher all year, most consistent pitcher all year that's out. And especially for obviously the series that's playing right now is the Brewers. As I'm recording this, they just started the game now, and would have liked to have him on the helm there. But we'll say the second game, we in the first of the doubleheaders, it was 10 runs to 3 in that game in particular. Great work from Assad in pitching. So it was 3 down at the bottom of the 4th, which wasn't great for him, but we did get 3 back in the top of the 5th. We got 3 in the top of the 6th, and we got 4 in the top of the 8th. So we ended up going from 3 down to 10 runs straight. But in saying that, in terms of scoring, Jared Young scored 2 in the bottom of the 4th, and then Francisco Alvarez scored a homer as well on his own. Michael Conforto scored a double, which scored PCA. Then Michael Bush hit a 2-run home run to tie it up at 3. The top of the 5th, top of the 6th, Dansby ended up hitting a homer, 3-run home run. And then the top of the 8th, Dansby had a great day that day after hitting a 3-run home run. Hits a grand slam to make it 10-3 in the top of the 8th. So that was great from him. Fantastic in terms of result there for him. Had a big day that day in particular, because we'll get to the second game, but it was 10-5 in the second game. Obviously, we scored 1 in the top of the second. They scored 3. The Mets scored 3 in the bottom of the second. We scored 3 in the top of the 4th. They scored 1, so it was tied up after 4 innings. We scored 2 in the top of the 6th. They scored 1. We scored 1 in the top of the 8th and 3 in the top of the 9th. So we made it 10 runs to 5 and 20 runs in the day as well, which was fantastic on that. Carson Kelly scored the double in the top of the second. The bottom of the second, Francisco Alvarez ended up scoring, and then AJ Ewing. I don't think that's how that's pronounced, but that's how it's spelled. He hit a 2-run home run in the bottom of the 3rd. Then Pedro Ramirez got Nico Horner in to score. Then Dansby hit a single as well to score Carson Kelly. Then PCA ended up scoring Pedro as well to make it 4-3. Then Vientos ended up homering in the bottom of the 4th to tie it up at 4. Dansby hit a triple on a fly ball, which scored Pedro Ramirez. Great ball as well in that. Matt Shaw hit a force out, though obviously did score Dansby Swanson in. And we got PCA got out on second, but Matt Shaw ended up going on first on the first out, so that made it 6-4. Bo Bichette ended up hitting a homer to make it 6-5 in the bottom of the 6th and the top of the 8th from a throwing error by the first baseman. Pedro Ramirez scored, and PCA ended up going to second. Then Pedro ended up hitting a single, which scored Nico Horner in the top of the 9th, and then Dansby also hit a single as well score Carson Kelly and Pedro Ramirez to make it 10 runs to 5. So with that, in those couple of games, in the one series, Dansby Swanson had hit 15 RBIs in general during the games, which was fantastic. And what I will say is that we did pick up another pitcher as well, obviously with Cabrera also going down, as well as Ben Brown. From the Mets, we got the left-hand pitcher, David Peterson, who will actually play, when I'm recording this, will play tomorrow against the Brewers. So we'll see what happens with that. For our first baseman and designated hitter, Cole Mathis. It is one of our prospects. So we added some pitching depth, obviously, with the injuries that we've got. We also brought in reliever Drew Pomerantz for a minors deal as well. But Matthew Boyd did come back from the IL, come back yesterday to play against the Mets for this first pitching role on the mound. And it ended up being a 4-3 win in extra innings in the last game. So I was very nervous. Scored 3 in the top of the 6th. They scored 2 in the bottom of the 6th and 1 in the 7th. Obviously tied up all at 9. And then we scored 1 run in the 10th and they didn't score 1. So Michael Conforto in the top of the 6th ended up scoring. Dansby in. Alex Bregman scored a double to a line drive. And then it was Michael Conforto obviously scoring. But in a fielding error by the right fielder, Alex Bregman ended up advancing to third base rather than a second. So, which ended up making sure that Ian Happ ended up, when he hit the single, and scored Alex Bregman as well. It was great. Then bottom of 6, we gave up a 2-run home run. Eric Wagaman ended up scoring a 2-run home run. Jared Young scored a homer again in the bottom of the 7th to make it 3-all after 7. And PCA hit a double, obviously, with Matt Shaw replacing Michael Amaya on second base, because obviously it was an extra inning. So PCA ended up hitting a double. Unfortunately, didn't score any more runs than that, but we didn't need it. So we made it a season sweep and a series sweep. So first series sweep in like a month and a bit, and the first season sweep of the year in terms of our series. So against the Mets, that was fantastic. Great in that regard. Did fantastic with that. Really needed that, to be honest. It was one of those things where the Cubs have needed something like this for a while. So I'm glad that we got the monkey off the back for that. And looking forward to the Brewers series in some capacity, even though we're down on pitchers. Let's hope that we can hit. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And they had the bases loaded and they just got an out and they ended the first. So that's great. The live coverage there. But yeah, so 4-game sweep in terms of the series currently with the Mets, and a season sweep of 7 games against the Mets in general for the season, which is fantastic for the Cubs. All right, next up, miscellaneous stuff. We'll talk about the World Cup, Paraguay versus Australia. So going into this, obviously, we had previously in the second round, we had Cristiano Ronaldo obviously score to be the only man that scored at 6 different World Cups. So he scored a goal. He ended up scoring 2 in the game against Uzbekistan. And obviously Lionel Messi earlier in the week with Argentina ended up scoring to make him the leading goal scorer overall in terms of the World Cup finals, like tournament stage, so like including group stages and finals with that. So and obviously I think with that, obviously he's not too far in front in terms of the Golden Boot right now. I think he's only a goal ahead of Haaland, and God, I can't even think of his name now. But I'll get to that in a second. But Paraguay versus Australia. Obviously, Australia only needed a draw to get into this, getting into the round of 32. It was a 0-0 draw. So pretty average in terms of the game. We'll say it was 12 shots to 7 in terms of Australia in Australia's favour, 5 shots to 2 on target in Australia's favour, 46% possession to 42, though that number was over 50% at the end of the first half. Paraguay were definitely better in the second half, 1 yellow card each, but only had to play for a draw. Thankfully, we did do that, but we didn't need to. We could have won, but in saying that, we played relatively okay. Wasn't great in terms of shooting for goal, but we did have a few good shots on, which was great. There was some things that need to be fixed up and obviously we got plenty of stuff to talk about when it comes to that. But in terms of other results, Turkey ended up winning 3 goals to 2 against the USA, and scored very late. I think it was the 8th minute of stoppage time as well. So we ended up getting through to the round of 32 in second position. So we'll play the team that is in second in Group G, I believe it was. So right now, in terms of the standings, and I've got to scroll down, it was Australia, in USA in first position with 6 points, Australia in second with 4, Paraguay in third with 4 as well. It's just goal difference being the difference there in terms of the two teams, and then Turkey in last position with 3 points at the end of it. So USA obviously are through, Australia is also through. In terms of Group G, obviously one game to play today, and it's later today, so we'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, I believe, when we'll talk about other stuff, or especially on Monday, we'll know who the opponents are for Australia. At the moment is Iran in second, but obviously Belgium and New Zealand have still got to play yet, and Egypt and Iran are still going to play as well, I believe. So, are they playing now? No, Egypt and Iran and New Zealand and Belgium play at 1 p.m. today, so when I'm recording this. So, they'll be both playing at the same time. One will be playing in Seattle at Lumen Field, the other will be playing in Vancouver. So, we'll see what happens, but at the moment, obviously, it's Iran at this point in time. But again, it could be a situation where we could play against. Most likely, it's going to get against Belgium. They're thinking that Belgium's going to win against New Zealand, and Iran's not going to win against Egypt. And they're going to say that Egypt possibly could go through by beating Iran. So we'll see what happens with that. It could shake up everything, especially if Belgium do win and Egypt do lose. If it could make it Egypt in second, it could make it Iran in second. If New Zealand end up winning against Belgium, there is a possibility that it could be New Zealand as well. There's things that are going to happen for that, but it is one of those things. It's one of those things, but it's most likely looking like it's going to be Belgium, which is not greatest in terms of the 4 teams that are playing in that. Belgium's probably the worst team that we could possibly face against, but it is obviously the higher chance. Then I think it might be Iran, then Egypt, then New Zealand. I think New Zealand was 7%, but here's a possibility on that as well. But great for the round of 32 for Australia. They're straight through. The United States, I don't think have their matchup yet. Oh no, they do. They do. What team was that? Bosnia, I think it was. Yeah, Bosnia. Yeah, so they play against Bosnia. So they're through. So in terms of teams that are through right now, in terms of recording, Mexico and South Africa. South Africa ended up getting a win over Korean Republic. So Korea is still nervously waiting, but South Africa are through. The Swiss through, topping their group, Canada in second, and obviously Bosnia in third. Then Brazil and Morocco in Group C, they go through. Scotland is still waiting on other results. Australia and obviously United States are through. Germany, the Ivory Coast, and Ecuador all through. The Netherlands are through. Japan is through, and Sweden are through. But yeah, so looking like there's quite a few teams that have gone through. France and Norway, they're through as well. Senegal had a 5-0 win over Iraq. So they ended up getting themselves in a good spot for one of the best teams in third position. At the moment, Argentina are through as well. They're on 6 points, so they're through. Colombia's through in their group as well. But yeah, so ultimately, in terms of the third place standings right now, Sweden are through, Ecuador are through, and Bosnia are through. Paraguay is in 4th position right now, Senegal in 5th, Croatia in 6th, Korea Republic in 7th, obviously that's South Korea, and Algeria in 8th with Scotland in 9th position, Cape Verde in 10th, Belgium in 11th, and obviously I think that's Democratic Republic of Congo, I believe. Yes, in 12th position right now in terms of the groups, but ultimately that will shuffle around a little bit. In terms of France, let me pick on France for a second because I need to know, trying to think who bloody, because he used to play for PSG, and I forget his fucking name. Mbappe, that's the one. I don't know how I forgot that, but yeah, Kylian, I can't remember how it's pronounced, but yeah, Mbappe is in second in the Golden Boot race for the World Cup. He's with Haaland on 4, and Messi is in front with 5 at the moment. But yeah, Mbappe is not that far behind in terms of goals overall in a World Cup finals setting. So yeah, 0-0 obviously for Paraguay and Australia, which means that Australia are through to the round of 32 and play the second position in Group G, which is looking like it possibly could be Belgium. At the moment, it's Iran when recording this, but could be any of Egypt, Belgium, Iran, or New Zealand. So it would be one of those 4, and we'll know about it later on today. We'll see what happens with the results, and yeah, we'll go from there. So yeah, round of 32 for the Socceroos, the 3rd time we've went through to the knockout stages of the World Cup. So fantastic result in terms of that for the Socceroos and for Australia. Alright, Monday morning, so we're just going to do a lot of the miscellaneous stuff, at least a little bit of catch up, and then obviously head into the Cubs series against the Brewers, which actually just finished this morning. Just had to wait for it to finish up. Did finish up like an hour a bit ago. Been procrastinating a little bit, I will admit. But first things first, obviously we'll give a table update in terms of the Titans and the Giants. The Titans did indeed actually drop down to second last, down to 16th position again, with Canberra getting a win. Canberra did get a win yesterday, though it wasn't as easy as it thought it was going to be. So with the table, Penrith Panthers on top with 28. Then following behind them in second is the Warriors with 24. And the Dolphins also on 24 points. It's just obviously between them. It's just the for and against. It's better for the Warriors, and only just. Despite the Dolphins beating the Warriors, though, again, it was only 2 points between the two in a cracking game on Saturday. Rounding out the top 4, also on 24 points, is the Roosters, then followed by Newcastle Knights, also on 24 points in 5th position. Manly in 6th position with 22, and Souths, and then rounding out the top 8 is Cronulla, also on 22 points there, both Souths and Cronulla, the Rabbitohs and the Sharks. 9th position is North Queensland, obviously with the win over the Panthers, with the Panthers dropping games to 2 Queensland sides over the last fortnight. Then obviously the big mover, the Bulldogs move into 10th position. Obviously after the win over the Titans, and obviously with a big, I was going to say percentage booster, but big hit in the for and against in the positive sense. The Tigers dropped to 11th position after losing very close to the Knights, but that game was, I don't know if it was a cracker. It was only 12-6, but it was 6-all for quite a lot of the second half. So don't know whether it was really good or really, really shit. Excuse me. Sorry. 12th position, Melbourne Storm on 16 points. Then Brisbane Broncos in 13th position, just outside the bottom four on 14. Canberra, obviously, with the win, also moved to 14 points in 14th position. Then Parramatta in 15th position, also on 14. Just their for and against is a hell of a lot worse than Canberra and Brisbane. At this point, in fact, Brisbane are only just in front by 1 point in terms of their for and against, minus 114 compared to minus 115 for the Raiders. Obviously, the Titans in 16th position with 12 points, and then obviously the Dragons on the bottom still with 6 at this point in time. They will say obviously the Titans will get the bye, so if Brisbane, Canberra and Parramatta all lose, which is impossible because at least with the Raiders, they also have the bye next week as well, so they'll move up. But if Brisbane Broncos end up losing to the Sharks and Parramatta lose to the Eels, then it will be a situation where the Titans will jump both Parramatta and possibly even Brisbane in terms of because their for and against is still, despite losing handily towards the end, still the for and against is only a minus 108, so we'll actually jump a couple of sides in there. Might just possibly jump out of the bottom four, though I think that we won't be able to by the end of the week. If Brisbane and Parramatta both lose, I think we'll only jump to 14th position rather than 13th, because obviously Canberra jumping into Brisbane's position with the bye. Which is unfortunate. Feel like that obviously we should have the win obviously with the Tigers, or obviously this game with the Bulldogs. But again, that's what it is. The Giants, obviously, with the loss as well, they do continue to slide, with North Melbourne and Collingwood both getting up over the weekend. Obviously, North Melbourne getting up yesterday against Essendon, though in a very, very close game. Much closer than I thought it was going to be. And then Collingwood obviously beating the Richmond Tigers, though again, in saying that, they did only win by I think it was 30 odd at the end of it, which is not too bad considering at one stage I think it was 40-50 plus in Collingwood's favour against Richmond. But Richmond had a bit of a fight. They led in the first quarter as well. Very unlucky to not finish the first quarter in front, actually, but yeah, it is what it is. So with obviously the bye with St Kilda, and obviously wins to Carlton, wins to Collingwood and wins to North Melbourne, we drop to 14th position, so just outside the bottom four. So we'll go over the table for that as well. So Fremantle on top with 56 points. After a cracker of a game in the West in their favour. Gold Coast were pretty woeful, only getting 28 points, I think, in total for the game, which is crazy. 29 points, rather, which is the lowest score they've gotten in quite some time. And yeah, decent percentage booster for Fremantle as well. Wasn't a heap, but obviously they're in front by quite a bit. Second, Sydney Swans on 48 points, so they're actually behind by 6 now. I should say they're behind by 8. So they're actually behind by 2 wins now into top spot. So not great for them. Not an ideal situation, especially losing to the Brisbane Lions earlier in the week. Now makes that gap 2 wins to get in front of Fremantle there. Third position, obviously Hawthorn on 42 points after winning against the Giants. Though again, in saying that, wasn't a convincing win, but we'll say obviously Giants were pretty woeful especially the first half, but definitely were better in the second half. Just needed to be a little bit better in front of goal as well, because possibly could have won that game. I'm tired. They would have jumped into the top 10. The Giants with a win, so there's that. Geelong, obviously 6 points behind. Obviously had the bye this week on 36 and 4th position. Brisbane Lions only just outside the top 4 on percentage. They're on 36 points as well as the Adelaide Crows. They drop as well because they dropped in the showdown. So they dropped to 6th position, just behind by 1 percentage point behind Brisbane Lions at the moment. So it's very interesting in there. Melbourne also on 36 points, obviously with the bye as well. And also the Western Bulldogs in 7th and 8th position, also on 36. Obviously, both of those teams on bye this week. North Melbourne jump into 9th position on 32 points. Then Collingwood jump into 10th in the bottom wildcard spot with 30. Obviously, with that draw to Hawthorn, that kind of helps them in many regards. The Suns dropped to 11th position with 28 points after losing pretty heavily to obviously the Fremantle Dockers. They were in 9th, so they have slid a bit. They have slid from being close to the top 4 in the last few weeks to dropping outside and just outside by the wildcard spots. But in saying that, they have slid out. Carlton in 12th position, also on the same amount of points, on 28 points as Gold Coast. Then 13th position is St Kilda with 24. Then the Giants also on 24. Port Adelaide, obviously with a win in the showdown, moved to 20 points in 15th position, which makes it very, very nervous for me, because if the Giants do slip up once more, especially considering they play Port Adelaide in about a month's time, towards the end of next month, they played at the Adelaide Oval. It could be an 8-point swing, and they could jump in front of us, and we drop into the bottom 4. So that's the reality we're looking at right now. We've obviously going up against Fremantle this week. In terms of the Giants, it's going to be pretty crazy. Though in saying that, Fremantle probably could, again, like I said earlier this week, could rest some of their players, obviously with the travel to Canberra. But who knows at this point? It's going to be a very nervous wait for the Giants to see what happens with that. But as I say, Port Adelaide into 20 points, still in 15th position. West Coast in 16th position with 16. Then Richmond in 17th, still with 8. And Essendon still at the bottom with 4 points at this point in time. In terms of the World Cup, obviously with Australia, they did go through, but we have been confirmed on what fixture we're actually going into in terms of the final the round of 32. So obviously we won in our situation. Obviously we got through. So we don't play until Saturday, my time, 4 a.m. my time, they play the game. But we play against Egypt. Egypt ended up actually drawing, I believe, from memory. If I go to scroll back a little bit. Yeah, they drew with Iran. So Iran gave themselves a chance to go into the best 8, with Belgium actually winning 5-1 over New Zealand. So with that, Belgium actually jumped on goal difference, actually jumped Egypt. So Egypt actually dropped into 2nd position, whereas Belgium actually won the group. So they actually got out. Quite a few games, obviously, that went crazily. Democratic Republic of Congo, they went through as well. Algeria and Austria yesterday, 3-3 draw. Though I say that, in saying that, I feel a bit hard done with Iran, because I don't understand how that much stoppage time was after that Algerian goal to cause the Austrian final goal of the game. And then obviously this morning, Canada won 1-0 over South Africa, so South Africa are out in terms of fixtures. But yeah, so we have Egypt, 4 a.m. my time, in Dallas. So Canada are through to the round of 16. They play the winner of the Netherlands versus Morocco, which is going to be a very interesting game. Obviously with us, we play against Egypt. If we do go through, we go up against the winner between Argentina and Cape Verde. Most likely it's going to be Argentina if we get through again. And we're going to be playing them again in the round of 16, as we did last World Cup 4 years ago, and we almost beat them. They only won, I think, in the last 5-10 minutes, which is crazy to me, considering, obviously Argentina won the whole thing, but Australia gave them a little bit of a run of their money, so that was great in terms of that. But obviously Egypt, we look forward to that in Dallas. I think it's supposed to be at AT&T. I think it obviously says Dallas Stadium, but obviously they don't have the licensing agreement for AT&T, so I'm pretty sure it's in AT&T because that's the big one. That's the big stadium in Dallas. And then obviously if we go through and beat Argentina, or Argentina beat us, or whoever goes through that round of 16 clash, we'll fight against the winners of the games against the Swiss and Algeria, and Colombia and Ghana in that side of the bracket. So pretty interesting in terms of all the round of 32 clashes, I should say. Germany, Paraguay, France, Sweden, obviously Canada and South Africa, which obviously Canada just won. Netherlands, Morocco, Portugal and Croatia, Spain and Austria, the USA against Bosnia, Belgium versus Senegal, which is going to be interesting as well. Brazil and Japan, that's also another interesting one as well. We'll see what Brazil bring to the knockout stage. Ivory Coast versus Norway, Mexico versus Ecuador, that's going to be interesting as well. And then England against the Democratic Republic of Congo, obviously Argentina and Cape Verde, as I said, Australia, Egypt, the Swiss and Algeria, and then Colombia and Ghana. So that's going to be interesting in terms of that. Now, obviously, talking about everything else, talk about the Cubs now, because obviously the series finished in Milwaukee after obviously getting the season sweep and the sweep against the Mets in New York. Obviously, this was the last trip on our away trip. Obviously, the 7 games that we did play, obviously against the Brewers, so rivalry game for in the division as well. And we lost the first game 6 runs to 2. So we ended up actually not playing relatively great, and I thought this was a situation where we're going to get absolutely trounced in this. But in terms of scoring, Seiya loves playing in Milwaukee after obviously the heroics that he kind of did to try and save the series in terms of the divisional series last season in the postseason. Seiya Suzuki homered in the top of the 5th, make it 1-0. Then Garrett Mitchell got a 2-run home run in the bottom of the 6th, and there was a triple as well, which made it 3-1 to the Brewers. The bottom of the 7th, William Contreras homered and scored 2. Then Seiya Suzuki got out on a sacrifice fly, and PCA ended up scoring, make it 5-2. So Seiya with a sacrifice fly and a home run during the game, and then Christian Yelich doubled on a fly ball. I think this was actually one that was saved from being a home run as well. So it only ended up being a double. It did score. It did obviously score 1. But obviously PCA ended up jumping over the fence, got his mitt just over the line, and kind of shoveled it back in, which was great. Obviously didn't win us the game, but obviously kept a run out of that, kept another run away, which is great. But saying that, obviously was a loss. It was both teams going into it with a 4-win streak at that point in time. So yeah, they broke our win streak. But we got it right back. 8-2 in the second game. Big game for Peterson. David Peterson, obviously coming from the Mets, obviously only just got traded not that long ago. Though it didn't start out great in the bottom of the first. On the first pitch, Jackson Chorio, I believe that's how that's pronounced, but I might be wrong with that. Homer, straight off, lead off on the bottom of the first. So that wasn't great. Seiya, once again, as I said, loves playing Milwaukee, top of the fourth. Got a 2-run home run, which scored Matt Shaw as well to make it 2-1 Cubs. Then in the bottom of the fifth, so not too long afterwards, Sal Frelick ended up hitting a single, which scored Blake Perkins to make it 2-all. Then in the top of the sixth, literally the next part of the inning, Nico Horner ended up hitting a single, which scored Alex Bregman. Michael Bush went to third. Nico Horner obviously went to second on an error in terms of the throw. And then right after that, Ian Happ just decided to put a stamp on the game and hit a 3-run home run to make it 6-2 Cubs. Then in the top of the seventh, Alex Bregman got out on a sacrifice fly. Matt Shaw ended up scoring, which made it 7-2. So Bregman ended up getting a score in the game. And just for the right measure, Michael Conforto in the top of the ninth hit a homer to make it 8-2. Big bomb, straight back. So it was 1-all in terms of the games, in terms of the series in Milwaukee, which was great. With that, we'll say in the first game, there was a pitch to PCA from the Miz, Mizzy Urowski, 105.5 miles per hour, so fucking absolute bullet straight through. So they went down to the last game, obviously dead grubber, and ended up being a bullpen game for a lot of this. So I think Rollinson ended up starting for most of this. In fact, he pitched, if I can see it, he pitched 2 innings. Then Wilson ended up pitching 4 1/3 innings, which was great. Then Caleb ended up pitching for 1 inning. Ferguson ended up pitching for 2/3. Jacob Webb, ended up pitching for 1. Roberts didn't pitch for that much. He got hit by 2 runs in the game. And then actually Jordan Wicks actually just got called up, and he ended up finishing the game off. But game went to extra innings. And it was a 4-3 win. So yes, the Cubs took the series 2-1 in Milwaukee. So the Brewers had lost 2 games straight, which was great for us. It was very, very nerving, and I will tell you why in a second. So Gary Sanchez, this was very early in the morning. I think it was like 4:30. I think it started in the morning. So I didn't watch this until a little bit around the top of the 7th, bottom of the 7th, when I was up at 7 o'clock, or before 7 o'clock, I should say. I think it was up around 6 actually. But yeah, Gary Sanchez hit a homer in the bottom of the second to make it 1-0. Then the top of the 7th was the next score. Ian Happ scored off a wild pitch, which made Nico Horner go to second base, so it was 1-all. Then obviously tied up. There's a few opportunities obviously for the Cubs to score earlier in the game, with bases loaded, with runners. Milwaukee was the same as well. They didn't score, so it ended up being 1-all at the end of 9 innings. So it went to extra innings. Michael Bush ended up walking, so Justin Dean ended up scoring. Justin Dean actually went in for the last out when we had at least 1 or 2 on base. I think 1 on second and 1 on first, and he just got out striking out, which wasn't great. So Justin Dean scored, but that was because the bases were loaded. So PCA went to third, Alex Bregman went to second, and Michael Bush went to first. Then Seiya Suzuki, again, his name pops up, singles on a line drive to left field, and it scored 2, which made it 4-1 Cubs. Alex Bregman ended up scoring, PCA ended up scoring, Michael Bush went to second, Seiya went to first. It was great in terms of that. Fortunately, couldn't get any more runs in. Then obviously it ended up being the Roberts show. Christian Yelich hit a single. I think it was off the second pitch, and went to Justin Dean in the right field. They scored 1 to make it 4-2. Then Garrett Mitchell ended up walking, which had scored Yelich with bases loaded. So it made it very nervous because there were so many situations of so many pitches going out as balls in the 10th inning for both teams. So it ended up loading the bases up both times, and thankfully, at least with Jordan Wicks, we got a double play on the play, which fantastically was great for us there. Obviously, Gary Sanchez hit it on the ground, went for a double play from Alex Bregman to Nico Horner at second base, and then from Nico to Michael Bush at first base. So Mitchell and Gary Sanchez got out at second and first, which made the game end at 4-3, and I was so fucking nervous for a lot of this because they did get the first out on a fly out in foul territory, but at the point that they scored their third run of the game, and the second run obviously in the 10th inning, there was no outs at all. So I was very nervous. I'm like, we're gonna fucking lose this game somehow, and the Brewers fans are not gonna let us live it down if we do drop this game. We didn't drop the game, thankfully. So we ended up winning 2 games out of the 3 in Milwaukee, and out of the last 7 games, we've won 6. Which is great in terms of being away. So yeah, Wilson, ended up being. I think we got him on waivers. It says in the article, which is crazy. But yeah, it was great. Great to see that. Obviously, with the bullpen, Bryce Wilson, fantastic in terms of him pitching. Got a few strikeouts as well. So in the division, Milwaukee are only in front by 5.5 games now to Chicago. Obviously, the Cubs being in second, St. Louis in third position, 7 games behind Milwaukee. Pittsburgh Pirates 9.5 behind, and Cincinnati 11.5 behind. Though in saying that, the Reds did win their series. I believe they won 2-1 in their series. They won 2 games to 1 against the Pirates. The Pirates did win today, so they put a dampener on that for them. And I believe the Cardinals also won today, but they lost their series 2-1 to the Florida Marlins as well. So great in terms of that. So for the division, obviously, it kind of puts it up in the air a little bit with Milwaukee going down twice, which makes it great for us. In the wildcard spot, we're a game and a half inside the wildcard spot in the 5th position. So right now we would be playing, I think we'd be playing Philly in Philly, I believe is how that works. But the Dodgers in front in the National League in terms of the wildcard spots. They're in the 1st position, Milwaukee in 2nd, and just behind them is the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves obviously have been a little bit loose since winning, being the first team to 40 wins. They're now behind by 5 wins on the docket behind the Dodgers. The Dodgers have played, I think they've played more games though. They've played 84 compared to 82. So they've played only a couple of more games. And obviously Atlanta in the last 10 games, 3-7. So not ideal for them. Philly in 4th position, 2.5 games in the wild card spot. Obviously, Chicago Cubs, and then rounding out the 6th is the St. Louis Cardinals, obviously with their win, with San Diego Padres and the Florida Marlins both looking in half a game behind. Followed by the Nationals, who are 2 games behind. In terms of the American League, with the Yankees getting swept by the Red Sox, which is crazy. In fact, are they actually playing right now? They are playing right now. But losing 3 games of the 4, possibly could lose and get swept in the series against the Red Sox. Tampa Bay move up to the top of the American League again. White Sox in 2nd, and the Texas Rangers are actually in 3rd position right now, which is crazy to me. Didn't think that they would top the West, but they're in there. The Yankees currently in 4th position, 7.5 games in the positive in terms of the wild card spots. Cleveland Guardians in 5th position, plus 2.5 games in, and then the Seattle Mariners in the 6th position with Houston Astros being out by half a game, though they were in the wild card spot yesterday, I believe. So, or earlier this week anyway. And then obviously the Athletics behind them, a game and a half out, and then the Minnesota Twins actually being 2 games out on the American League side. But fantastic from the Cubs. Ultimately needed this. In saying it, obviously, with the postseason, if we do go through the postseason, the games are going to go through Milwaukee at some point if we play them. If they don't get out, say if they drop into the 3rd position and play against a team that's in 6th in terms of the wild card, we're going to be playing them in Milwaukee at some point in time. So we had to win some of the games in Milwaukee, whether it be obviously a wild card spot, say if they get into a 3rd and we go into 6th, or in divisional or the championship series, obviously fighting for the pennant. We'd have to go through Milwaukee unless they lose on their side of the bracket and we're on the other side somehow. That's the only way we're going to completely go against the Brewers and not fight against them in the postseason. But it's one of those things where we needed this. We didn't want to be down 6 games to nothing in the division against them. But we are 4 games to 2 behind, but at least it's a game behind in the season series rather than obviously being down 6 games or 5 games at that. I think we've still got a series against them to play yet, but ultimately we do have some very important games coming up. Obviously, we go back home to Wrigley Field tomorrow, I believe. Reloading the app back up again. Yes, we got San Diego at home at Wrigley Field tomorrow. So a 3-game series there, then a break between those. Between that and the next series, which obviously is against the St. Louis Cardinals at home at Wrigley Field as well, before the break on the 7th of July. Then we play against the Orioles in Baltimore, and then Cincinnati for 2 games. For 2 games before obviously the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game. So, and that's in Cincinnati as well. So, very interesting to see what will happen the next couple of weeks. But obviously San Diego starting tomorrow, leading right through to the break on Friday, which will be Saturday for me, and then bringing it through to the games against the Cardinals in the division as well. So that's going to be an interesting series as well, because hopefully we can make up some spots against Milwaukee, and Milwaukee kind of lose a little bit of traction in the division, because they'll throw the division right out if they lose a couple of games more now in the next week or so, especially if, like, say St. Louis and the Cubs do end up winning in the series, in the 3-game series at Wrigley Field. Obviously with St. Louis ended up winning in St. Louis And if I go back to that, obviously 2-1. If we end up winning the series 2-1, obviously St. Louis will be back a game to Milwaukee if they lose anything, and then obviously, or at least half a game, and obviously the Cubs will be back at least a game or two back behind them as well if they let up. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. But again, we've got to play San Diego first, obviously then have the day break, and then obviously play against St. Louis. So that's going to be very interesting in terms of that. We'll see what happens with all that. But yeah, great from the Cubs, obviously win against the Brewers. And thank you guys so much for watching this long episode of How's My Team. Apologise for all my rambling and that, but when I say I am passionate. Obviously, we won't talk about the Titans this week coming, because obviously they have the bye. Obviously, talk about the Giants. We'll talk about, obviously, Australia against Egypt in the round of 32, and obviously we'll talk about the Cubs as well. So I won't take the week off, because once I do take the week off, you know what will happen. Things will happen. Crazy things will happen. So won't take the week off next week. But yeah, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Mantes 100. You guys have a great night, and of course, take care.